The billionaire in the wheelchair looked at my worn-out shoes, then at me, two children hiding behind me, and said, "I don't hire beggars with baggage." For a second, the whole marble foyer went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that makes every small shame in your life stand up and introduce itself. My son, Noah, squeezed my coat with his 9-year-old fingers. My daughter, Lily, who was 6 and still believed adults were supposed to be kind if you smiled at them first, stopped smiling. I felt her little hand go cold inside mine. I had been called plenty of things since my husband died. Poor. Unlucky. Too proud. Too tired. But no one had ever said it in front of my children, in a house bigger than the church where I buried their father. I looked at the man in the wheelchair. Alexander Whitmore was 42, rich enough for his last name to be printed in half the construction cranes in Dallas, and angry enough to make the air around him feel sharp. He sat beneath a chandelier that probably cost more than my car, dressed in a charcoal sweater, dark slacks, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to be human. His legs were still beneath a folded blanket. His eyes were not. His eyes were alive with judgment. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to tell Noah and Lily that nobody got to speak to us like that. I wanted to walk back to my dented blue Honda, drive to our apartment with the peeling bathroom ceiling, make boxed mac and cheese for dinner, and pretend my pride could pay rent. But pride had never bought Lily's asthma inhaler. Pride had never kept the lights on. Pride had never put decent shoes on Noah's feet. So I lifted my chin. "My children are not baggage," I said. "And I'm not here to beg. I'm here because your household manager said you needed a caregiver who wouldn't quit." Something flickered across his face. Not guilt. Not respect. Maybe surprise. His sister, Grace, stood near the staircase with both hands clasped so tightly her knuckles looked white. She had called me 3 times that morning to apologize before I even arrived. "He's difficult," she had warned me. Then, after a pause, she'd added, "But he wasn't always cruel." I had heard that before. People always said cruel men used to be different, before the accident. Before the money. Before the drinking. Before the woman left. Before life gave them an excuse to punish everyone else. My name is Maya Rivera. I was 34 years old when I first stepped into Alexander Whitmore's mansion in Highland Park, and I had been a widow for 4 years. My husband, Daniel, died in a highway pileup on I-35 during a rainstorm when Lily was still in diapers. He had been driving home from a double shift at a warehouse outside Fort Worth. A semi lost control, 6 cars folded into each other, and by the time the police knocked on my door, I already knew. I knew because Daniel always called me when he left work. That night, my phone never rang. After he died, people brought casseroles for 2 weeks. Then they went back to their lives, and I learned that grief did not stop rent from being due on the 1st. I cleaned office buildings at night. I watched other people's kids during the day. I folded laundry for women who complained about husbands who forgot anniversaries, while I would have given anything to hear Daniel forget something again. Then Lily got sick. Then our landlord raised rent. Then the woman who watched my kids after school moved to Oklahoma. That was how I ended up taking an emergency job through an agency that specialized in high-profile domestic care. The woman on the phone spoke like she was handing me a warning label. "Mr. Whitmore is not easy," she said. "He has fired 5 caregivers in 8 months. What does the job pay?" She told me. I accepted before she finished the sentence. Now I was standing in front of him, with my kids beside me because their school had closed early for a waterline break and my backup babysitter had food poisoning. I had considered canceling. Then I had looked at the eviction notice taped inside my kitchen cabinet where Noah wouldn't seat. So I came anyway. Alexander rolled his chair closer, stopping a few feet from me. "I don't need anyone," he said. "Grace needs to feel less guilty." "That's different." Grace flinched. I noticed it. So did he. "You need someone to manage your medication, meal schedule, therapy reminders, hygiene support, transfers when your night aide isn't here, and transportation coordination," I said. "You can call it whatever helps you sleep." His jaw tightened. Grace looked like she wanted to either laugh or cry. "You talk too much for someone who needs this job," Alexander said. "I talk the right amount for someone who read your care notes." Hestered at me. Then he looked at my children again. "Keep them out of my study." I nodded. "Keep them quiet." I nodded again. "And if they touch anything expensive, I'll deduct it from your pay." That one hit Noah. He looked down at his sneakers, both soles peeling at the front like little mouths. I took a breath through my nose. "If my children break something, I'll take responsibility," I said. "If you break their spirit, that's on you." Grace's eyes widened. Alexander's face turned colder. "For your sake," he said, "I hope your work is better than your attitude." It usually is. That was how my first day began. By lunch, he had insulted my coffee, my handwriting, my cheap drugstore lotion, the way I folded a throw blanket, and the fact that I wore my wedding ring on a chain around my neck. "Can't move on?" he asked while I arranged his pills. "No," I said. His eyes lifted. "I don't want to." For the first time all morning, he didn't answer. The mansion was beautiful in the way museums are beautiful, polished, expensive, and impossible to live inside without feeling watched. There were floor-to-ceiling windows, limestone walls, a kitchen with 2 islands, and a backyard with a pool so blue it looked fake. But there was no laughter. No fingerprints. No family photos newer than 2 years old. Only silence, only money. Only a man trapped inside both. Grace stayed nearby most oft that first week, hovering like someone waiting for a bomb to go off. She was kind, elegant, and exhausted. Her husband, Trevor Langley, came by almost every afternoon with leather folders and a smile that never reached his eyes. Trevor was handsome in the way politicians are handsome, rehearsed. He called Alexander brother, though they were only connected by marriage. He kissed Grace on the cheek like he was posing for a campaign ad. He always wore expensive suits, always checked his watch, always spoke to Alexander as if he were a problem to be managed. "Just sign these," Trevor would say, sliding documents onto the desk. "No stress.no meetings. Let me carry the ugly parts for a while." Alexander usually signed. Sometimes he read. Mostly he looked tired. I learned pieces of the story by overhearing what nobody meant to tell the help. Alexander had built Whitmore Development from a family company into one of the biggest commercial construction firms in Texas. He was the kind of man who had once walked through job sites in boots, remembered foremen by name, and drove himself everywhere. Then, 2 years earlier, he had crashed his SUV on a wet road after leaving a private investor dinner. The accident damaged his spine. He survived. His old life did not. The tabloids said he had been distracted by a phone call from Grace. He never publicly blamed her, but inside that house, blame lived in every room. Grace carried it like a second body. Alexander punished her by refusing comfort and punished himself by refusing hope. The first time I saw his physical therapist try to get him to stand, he barked at her so violently Lily dropped her crayon in the hallway. "I said I'm done," he shouted. "You were upright for 3 seconds," the therapist said. "Put that on a billboard." The therapist left with tears in her eyes. Alexander wheeled himself into the study and slammed the door so hard a framed architectural drawing rattled on the wall. Lily looked up at me. "Mommy," she whispered, "is he mad because his legs hurt?" I looked at the closed door. "No, baby. I think he's mad because his heart does." She considered that with all the seriousness of a 6-year-old philosopher. Then she picked up her crayon. "I can draw him a new heart." "No," Noah said quietly. "Don't. He'll yell." Noah had grown protective in the years after Daniel died. He watched doors, watched bills. Watched my face when I thought he wasn't looking. A child should not have known the sound of a mother counting grocery money under her breath, but mine did. That afternoon, Lily drew a house with wheels instead of steps. She left it outside Alexander's study. He threw it away. At least, I thought he did. The next morning, I found it flattened carefully beneath a paperweight on his desk. He saw me looking. "Trash missed the basket," he said. "Of course. I don't like children. Most children don't like rude billionaires either. They adapt." He snorted before he could stop himself. It wasn't laughter. But it was something. Over the next 3 weeks, the impossible happened slowly. Noah started doing homework in the breakfast room while I worked. Lily started bringing drawings. Alexander complained every time, but he never told them to leave again. He told Noah his math answer was wrong once. Noah flushed, expecting humiliation. Instead, Alexander rolled closer, took a pencil, and showed him how to break the problem into steps. "You don't panic at the whole building," he said. "You check the foundation first." Noah stared at him. "You build buildings?" "I used to." "You still own the company, right?" Alexander's face closed. "Owning something doesn't mean you can't still reach it." Noah nodded like he understood more than he should. Lily, meanwhile, treated Alexander's wheelchair like it was simply part of him, no different from glasses or a watch. "Does it go fast?" she asked one day. "No, can it?" "It's not a toy." "But if it went fast, would you race?" "No," she narrowed her eyes. "I think you would." He looked away. But later I caught him reading the manual for the chair's speed settings. The first real crack in his wall came on a Friday stormy enough to make every window tremble. Lily had an asthma flare. I was in the laundry room when Noah yelled my name. I ran into the hall and found Lily bent forward, struggling for breath, her little chest working too hard. My purse was in the kitchen, inhaler inside, but before I could move, Alexander rolled from the study with terrifying speed. "Top zipper," he said. "What?" "Your bag. Purple inhaler. I saw you put it there." He had noticed. He had remembered. I grabbed it, helped Lily take 2 puffs, and held her until her breathing slowed. Noah cried silently into his sleeve. Alexander stayed nearby, rigid, pale, useless in the way people feel useless when they care and cannot fix the thing in front of them. When Lily finally lifted her head, she smiled at him weakly. "Thank you, Mr. Grumpy. No one calls me that." "I do." His mouth moved. Nothing came out. That night, after the kids fell asleep in the guest sitting room, I found Alexander in the study staring at Lily's newest drawing. It showed him in his wheelchair beside a huge tree, with Noah, Lily, and me around him. She had drawn a ramp up to the front door and a son wearing sunglasses. "She draws everyone with giant hands," he said. "She thinks hands are how people help." He swallowed. "I forgot children could make things simple." "They don't make things simple," I said, "they just say the part adults hide." He turned his chair toward the window. "Daniel. That was your husband?" I touched the ring on my chain. "Yes." "How long?" "Married 7 years. Gone 4. "Do you miss him every day?" "Yes." "Does it get easier?" "No." He looked at me. "That's not comforting." "It gets different," I said. "You stop bleeding all over the floor. But some mornings you still step wrong inside your own life." His face changed then. Not softened exactly. Recognized. Like I had spoken a language he didn't know anyone else understood. For a while, things almost became bearable. Alexander still snapped. Still shoved help away, still had days when pain turned him vicious. But he began apologizing in small, ugly ways. A fresh box of crayons appeared on the breakfast table. Noah's math workbook was replaced by a better one. A pediatric pulmonologist called me after Lily's next flare and said, "Mr. Whitmore's office asked us to fit your daughter in." I confronted him. "I don't accept charity." He did not look up from his laptop. "Then consider it a scheduling favor." "I'll pay you back." "You won't." "I will." "Maya." The way he said my name stopped me. Not because it was soft. Because it was tired. "Let me do one thing that isn't selfish," he said. So I let him. That was my first mistake. Not because he helped. Because I began to care. And caring inside a rich man's house is dangerous when everyone else there has something to lose. The first warning came from Trevor. He found me in the hallway outside Alexander's study one evening while Grace was upstairs taking a call. He smiled like we were old friends. "Maya, right?" "Yes. You've done wonders with him." "I do my job." "That's what worries me." I stared at him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Alexander is vulnerable. He has money, trauma, guilt, and too much pride. Women in your situation sometimes confuse access with opportunity." My stomach turned cold. "Women in my situation?" He glanced down at my shoes. "You know what I mean." I had spent my whole adult life learning not to slap men who deserved it. I said nothing. Trevor kept smiling. "Don't mistake pity for affection. And don't bring those kids around his assets." The word assets made me angrier than the insult. "My children are not thieves." I didn't say they were. "You didn't have to." His smile disappeared. "Stay in your lane, Maya." Then he walked away. That night, I packed our things early. I told myself I would finish the week, take my check, and leave before me children got attached to a place that would never truly want us. But when I went to gather Lily's drawings from the breakfast room, I heard voices through the cracked study door. Trevor. And a woman I recognized from video calls, Vanessa Cole, Whitmore Development's legal director. Vanessa was cool, polished, and beautiful in a way that felt sharpened. She wore white blazers and red lipstick and spoke like every sentence had already been notarized. Alexander was not with them. "The board meeting is in 10 days, Trevor said. "He'll sign before then," Vanessa replied. "Keep him exhausted. Therapy days are best. Pain medication makes him compliant. I'm tired of babysitting a cripple who still thinks he's a king." My hand froze on the doorknob. Vanessa's voice lowered. "If he sees the original accident report, we're finished." Trevor cursed under his breath. "What about the mechanic?" "Handled." "And Grace?" "She still thinks the phone call caused the crash. Guilt makes people obedient." My heart began punching my ribs. Then Vanessa said the word that changed everything. "Brakes." I backed away before they opened the door. I did not sleep that night. Every bad feeling I had swallowed in that mansion rose at once. The rushed documents. Alexander's exhaustion. Grace's guilt. Trevor's fake concern. Vanessa's careful control. And one rich, broken man who had spent 2 years believing his life ended because of a mistake, when maybe someone had made sure it ended that way. The next morning, I found Noah sitting at the kitchen island with something in his hands. "Mom," he whispered, "I found this under the couch in the small library." It was a USB drive. A strip of masking tape was wrapped around it. On the tape, written in black marker, were 3 words, preliminary crash file, and underneath, in red ink, someone had written, brake line mismatch. Before I could take it, Trevor appeared behind us. His face went flat. Give me that. Noah jumped. I closed my hand around the drive. It was under the couch. It belongs to the company. Then I'll give it to Mr. Whitmore. Trevor stepped closer. For the first time, his charm was gone. You don't want to get involved in things you don't understand. Lily came into the kitchen rubbing her eyes, still sleepy. Trevor looked at her, then at Noah. Then at me. You have two beautiful children, he said softly. A mother should be careful where she creates enemies. Every drop of blood in my body turned to ice. I handed him the USB. Because my children were watching. Because poor mothers cannot afford bravery that leaves their kids unprotected. Because I knew if I fought him there, he would win. Trevor smiled, pocketed the drive, and left. But Noah's little face was pale. Mom, he whispered, I copied it. I stared at him. What? Hezwallowed. I thought it might be important. Mr. Alexander says important files need backups. From his backpack, he pulled out his cheap school laptop. My hands started shaking. Noah Rivera, I whispered, you are grounded and brilliant. He almost smiled. That afternoon, I waited until Trevor left. Then I walked into Alexander's study and closed the door behind him. He was reviewing a stack of contracts, looking pale after therapy. If this is about your schedule, talk to Grace, he said without looking up. It's about your accident. His hand stopped. Slowly, he lifted his eyes. Don't. I heard Trevor and Vanessa talking. His face hardened. I said don't. They mentioned the original report. They mentioned brakes. The color left his face. For one moment, I saw terror instead of anger. Then he turned vicious. You think you're the first person to come in here and imagine secrets? You think because you've been in my house 5 minutes, you understand my life? No, I said. I think someone has been using your pain to steal from you. He laughed once. It was ugly. You are a caregiver. Not a detective. I'm a mother. We notice danger before men with lawyers do. Get out. Alexander, get out of my house. The words hit harder than he expected. Because I had heard them before from men who thought a paycheck bought the right to humiliation. My eyes burned, but I would not cry in front of him. I opened the door to Noah and Lily were standing in the hall. Lily clutched a drawing to her chest. Alexander saw them. For half a second, shame crossed his face, then pride crushed it. I took my children's hands. Come on, I said. Walked through the marble foyer. Grace came down the stairs, alarmed. Maya? I kept walking. At the front door, Noah turned back. His voice shook, but he stood straight. Mr. Whitmore, my mom doesn't steal. She doesn't lie. She finds the things people throw away because they think poor people don't matter. Alexander went still. Noah wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. And you just threw her away too. Then we left. Outside, the evening air felt too hot. I buckled Lily into the car. Noah climbed in silently. I sat behind the wheel with my hands on it, staring at the Whitmore mansion through the windshield. I told myself it was over. I told myself we would survive the way we always did. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Alexander's voice came through, low and rough. Did he threaten your children? I closed my eyes. Yes. A long silence. Then he said, come back tomorrow. Not for the job. For the truth. I should have said no. Any smart woman would have said no. But I looked at Noah in the rearview mirror, his little mouth set with fear and courage, and Lily asleep with her inhaler in her lap. I thought about Trevor's voice. A mother should be careful where she creates enemies. Then I thought about Daniel, who had died because one rainy road and one bad truck driver changed everything. And I realized something. If someone had stolen the truth about Alexander's crash, they had not just stolen money. They had stolen years off his life. They had stolen Grace's peace. They had turned a man's wheelchair into a prison built out of lies. And now they had threatened me children. I started the car. The next morning, I walked back into that mansion with Noah's copied file hidden in a lunchbox under a peanut butter sandwich. Alexander was waiting in the study. For once, he did not insult Michos. He did not insult my children. He looked at me like a man who had spent the night staring at a locked door and finally realized he still had a key. Show me everything, he said. So I did. The file Noah copied was incomplete, but it was enough to open a wound. There were photos from the crash scene. A service note from 3 days before the accident. A preliminary mechanical assessment that said the right rear brake line showed signs of tool-based interference inconsistent with collision impact. There was also a memo from Vanessa requesting the line be removed from the final report because it was speculative and reputationally dangerous. Alexander read that sentence 5 times. Then threw the tablet across the room. It hit the wall and cracked. Lily screamed. Alexander's face collapsed. I'm sorry, he said immediately, voice shaking. Lily, I'm sorry. She hid behind me, but she nodded. Noah stared at the broken tablet. You said buildings fall when the foundation is bad, he said. Maybe this is the foundation. Alexander closed his eyes. That was the moment everything changed. We made a plan because anger without a plan is just noise. Grace joined us first. She cried when she saw the preliminary report. Not loud crying. Quiet, devastating crying, the kind that makes you realize a person has been holding her breath for years. I called him that night, she whispered. I told him I was worried Trevor was hiding something from. He said he'd come over after dinner. I thought I distracted him. It hot, Alexander's voice broke. I blamed you. Grace looked at him, I know. I let you stand in this house for 2 years carrying what I threw at you. I let you. No, his hand trembled on the armrest. You loved me. I punished you for it. That was the first apology I ever heard him make without choking on it. Grace reached for his hand. He let her. The second person we brought in was a forensic accountant named Elaine Brooks, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, square glasses, and the energy of a judge who had already decided everyone was guilty. Elaine had worked with Alexander's father decades earlier. She arrived in a navy suit, looked around the mansion, then looked at Alexander. You look terrible. Good to see you too. You finally ready to stop sulking? I expected him to explode. Instead, he said, yes. Elaine blinked. Well, damn. For 2 weeks, the house became a secret war room. We worked around Trevor's visits. We scanned documents. We checked digital signatures. We compared payment approvals with hospital records. Elaine found the money trail first. Millions had been siphoned through shell vendors with names so bland they sounded fake even before they were proven fake. Lone Star Consulting Group, Delta Site Logistics, North Corridor Strategies. Payments had gone out while Alexander was sedated after surgeries. Contracts had been altered. Board authorizations had been backdated. Trevor's fingerprints were everywhere. Vanessa's were smarter. She had buried hers under layers of legal language, delegated approvals, and risk mitigation memos. But Elaine was patient. Rich thieves, she told me, were usually lazy in one place because they were arrogant in all places. She found the lazy place. A private email account. Vanessa had forwarded one document to herself the night after the accident. The subject line said, Final Cleanup. Inside was a scanned copy of the original mechanic's report. Alexander stared at the screen until I thought he might stop breathing. Someone touched my brakes, he said. Nobody answered. Because there are moments when truth arrives so heavy that even sympathy feels disrespectful. The mechanic's name was Marcus Bell. He had owned a repair shop in South Dallas, but after the accident he had closed it and moved to a smaller town outside Waco. Grace found Arnold invoice. Elaine found his forwarding address. Alexander wanted to send lawyers. I said no. Lawyers scare people who already ran once, it told him. Send someone poor. He looked at me. I know what it means to be afraid of powerful people, I said. So I went. Not alone. Alexander insisted on hiring security. I insisted they stay 2 blocks away so Marcus wouldn't think I came to threaten him. Noah wanted to come. I said absolutely not. Lily packed me a drawing for bravery. It showed me holding a shield shaped like a pancake. Marcus Bell met me behind a small garage that smelled like motor oil and old rain. He was a broad man with tired eyes and a limp. When I said Alexander Whitmore's name, he turned away. I told the truth once, he said. Truth cost me my shop. Trevor Langley? He looked at me sharply. Vanessa Cole? His jaw worked. It took Lily's drawing from my purse and handed it to him without knowing why. My daughter made this. She's 6. Trevor threatened her and my son because we found something he wanted buried. Marcus looked at the drawing. Then he sat on an overturned bucket and rubbed both hands over his face. I had 3 guys on payroll, he said. A wife with cancer. A mortgage. Vanessa came in with a man I never saw again. Not Trevor. Someone rougher. She said the crash was caused by weather and distraction. She said if I tried to complicate things, Whitmore Development would bury main lawsuits. What did you see? He breathed hard through his nose. The brake line wasn't torn from impact. It was loosened. Not enough to fail in a driveway. Enough to fail under pressure, on a wet road, downhill. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. I felt sick. Did you keep proof? He looked at the garage door. For a long moment, I thought he would say no. Then he stood. I kept the photos. And the first report. And the voicemail Vanessa left when she thought fear would make me delete everything. When I brought those files back, Alexander did not speak for almost an hour. He sat in the study, surrounded by evidence, while rain tapped against the windows like knuckles. Finally, he said, I have spent 2 years hating my body because I thought it betrayed me. His voice was quiet, but my body fought to live after they tried to kill me. That was the second crack. Not in his anger. In his despair. He started therapy again the next day. Not because walking would fix everything. Not because recovery stories are clean and inspirational and come with music swelling at the perfect moment. Real rehab is ugly. It is sweat and shaking muscles and pain that makes a grown man curse God under his breath. It is progress so small it feels insulting. He stood for 4 seconds. Then 6. Then fell back into the chair with his face twisted in rage. Lily clapped anyway. Your legs woke up for a tiny commercial, she said. Alexander laughed. A real laugh. It startled everyone, including him. Noah began timing him with an old stopwatch. Grace brought coffee. I stood nearby pretending I was only there for safety, but every time Alexander pushed through 1 more second, my throat tightened. Something was happening between us. Not romance like in movies, where grief disappears because someone attractive looks at you in soft lighting. It was more dangerous than that. It was trust. He saw me tired, unpolished, stubborn, scared for my kids, and still standing. I saw him cruel, ashamed, broken, furious, and still trying. One night, after the children fell asleep on the couch during a storm, I found him in the kitchen making a disaster out of hot chocolate. Cocoa powder dusted the counter. Milk had splashed on the floor. His chair was angled awkwardly by the stove. What are you doing? Clearly failing. You could have called me. Inno. He sounded irritated with himself, not me. I wanted to make them something, he said. Lily said hot chocolate helps thunder. I took the spoon from him. You're burning it. Then rescue it. We stood there together, me stirring, him watching the rain streak the windows. After a while, he said, Trevor thinks I'm useless. Trevor is a criminal. That too. I glanced at him. You're not useless. I can't carry Lily when she falls asleep. I can't shoot baskets with Noah. I can't walk into my own company without people staring like I'm a ghost. You saved Lily's life because you noticed where I kept her inhaler. You taught Noah not to be afraid of math. You remembered that my coffee tastes better with cinnamon even though you pretend not to drink it. He looked at me. That's not the same as being whole. No, I said, it's being here. The air changed. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a doer unlocking in another room. He reached toward my hand, then stopped himself. I don't know what I'm allowed to want anymore, he said. The honest pain in his voice frightened me more than his cruelty ever had, because cruelty I could resist. Pain I understood. Before I could answer, the security alarm chirped. Alexander looked toward the hall. A second later, Grace rushed in. Trevor's here. It was after 10 p.m. He walked into the kitchen without waiting to be invited, holding a folder and wearing fury under a thin layer of calm. Vanessa came behind him, her red lipstick perfect, her eyes scanning the room like she was counting exits. Maya, Trevor said. You're here late. She works here, Alexander said. Does she? Vanessa asked. Or is she running an amateur investigation that could damage your company beyond repair? Grace went pale. Alexander's face turned stone still. Trevor placed the folder on the table. We need to move up the transfer of executive authority. Tonight. No, Alexander said. Trevor smiled. You haven't even read it. I said no. Vanessa opened the folder. Alexander, your erratic behavior is becoming a governance problem. Unauthorized audits. Contacting former vendors, allowing a domestic employee access to confidential company material. If this reaches the board, they may question your capacity. There it was, the trap. Not just stealing. Not just covering up the crash. They were going to make him look mentally unstable. Trevor leaned down, both hands on the table. Sign the transfer. Let me protect what's left of your legacy. Alexander looked at the document, then at Grace. Then at me. For one terrifying moment, I thought he might fold. Pain makes people tired. Fear makes tired people obedient. Then Lily's sleepy voice came from the hallway. Mr. Grumpy? Everyone turned. She stood there in pink pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit by own ear. Noah was behind her, wide awake now. Trevor's eyes narrowed at the children. Something in Alexander changed so fast I almost heard it snap. Grace, he said quietly, take the kids upstairs. Trevor straightened, no need for drama. Alexander rolled his chair back from the table. You're right. We'll save the drama for tomorrow. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. What's tomorrow? Alexander smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. Like a man remembering he used to build towers. The board meeting. Trevor went very still. You're not ready. No, Alexander said. You're not. The next morning, everything exploded. Not publicly, not yet. But inside the mansion, fear moved like smoke. Trevor called Alexander 14 times before 8 a.m. Vanessa sent emails marked urgent. A board member suddenly requested a private conversation. Elaine's office reported that someone tried to hack her file server overnight. Marcus Bell called me from a gas station outside Waco saying a black SUV had been parked near his garage since dawn. Alexander listened to each report with a calm that scared me. "What are you going to do?" I asked. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. "For 2 years, they used my chair to make me smaller." He turned toward me. "Tomorrow, I'm going to make them look me in the eye." The board meeting was held on the 47th floor of Whitmore Tower, in a conference room that overlooked downtown Dallas like the city belonged to whoever sat at the head of the table. Alexander had not entered that building in 11 months. When we arrived, cameras were already outside. Not news cameras. Company PR. Trevor had arranged a controlled photo opportunity. He wanted images of himself guiding poor, fragile Alexander back into the company. The loyal brother-in-law. The responsible interim leader, the savior. He had even placed a ramp at the front entrance, though the building already had one. "For the picture." Alexander noticed. So did I. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Grace walked on his left. Elaine walked on his right. I followed with a black leather folder clutched to my chest. Marcus Bell was already upstairs with security. Noah and Lily were not supposed to come, but the school called about another closure, and Grace made the decision before I could panic. "They started this by threatening your children," she said. "Let them end it by seeing who they failed to scare." So my 2 children waited in a private office down the hall with hot chocolate, coloring books, and 2 security guards built like refrigerators. Before we entered the boardroom, Alexander stopped. His hands gripped the wheels of his chair. I bent slightly. "You okay?" "No," it was the first honest answer. Then he said, "But I'm going in anyway." Inside, Trevor stood near the head of the table wearing a navy suit and a grieving smile. Vanessa sat beside him with documents arranged perfectly in front of her. Board members murmured. Some looked pitying. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked like they had already chosen the safest side. Trevor came forward. "Alexander. We're all proud of you for being here." Alexander did not take his hand. "This is my building," he said. "Don't welcome me into it." The room chilled. Trevor recovered fast. "Of course. Let's sit. We have a sensitive agenda." Vanessa clicked a remote. A slide appeared on the screen. Executive continuity proposal. I almost laughed at the blandness of evil. Vanessa spoke first. "In light of Mr. Whitmore's ongoing medical challenges and recent irregular behavior, we recommend a temporary transfer of operational authority to Mr. Trevor Langley, with legal oversight through my office." A board member named Paul cleared his throat. "What irregular behavior?" Vanessa glanced at me. "Unauthorized sharing of company information with household staff. Contacting old vendors connected to settled insurance matters. Emotional volatility." Trevor sighed like this pained him. "My concern is Alexander's well-being. He has endured unimaginable trauma. But trauma can cloud judgment." Alexander folded his hands. "Are you finished?" Vanessa's smile tightened. "For now." "Good." He nodded to Elaine. The screen went black. Then a new slide appeared. Payment transfers. Shell companies. Hospital records. Digital signatures. For 12 seconds, nobody spoke. Elaine's voice cut through the room cleanly. "Over the last 22 months, approximately $18.7 million moved through vendor entities with no verifiable staff, equipment, or active project deliverables. The authorizations used Mr. Whitmore's digital credentials during periods when medical records show he was under sedation or inpatient care." Trevor laughed once. "This is absurd." Elaine looked at him over her glasses. "I was hoping you'd say that." Another slide appeared. Metadata. IP logs. Trevor's home office. Vanessa's private email. The room shifted. You could feel the moment powerful people started calculating distance from a sinking ship. Vanessa rose slightly. "This material was obtained improperly." Alexander spoke. "Was it altered?" She said nothing. "Was it altered, Vanessa?" Her silence answered. Trevor slapped his palm on the table. "This is a smear campaign led by a bitter caregiver who saw a rich disabled man ace an opportunity." The words landed like a slap. Every I turned to me.my face burned. For 1 second, I was back in the foyer, my children behind me, being called baggage. Then Alexander moved his chair forward. "Say one more word about her." Trevor's mouth stayed open. Alexander's voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "Maya Rivera walked into my house when everyone else walked out. She did the job none of you had the courage to do. She protected my sister from guilt you fed her, my children from your threats, and me from the lie you built around my body. You don't get to use her poverty as a weapon when your greed is sitting on the screen." My breath caught. "My children." He had said my children. Not the children. Mine. His eyes met mine briefly. Then he nodded to Elaine again. The accident report appeared. The room went completely still. The highlighted line read, "Tool-based interference inconsistent with collision impact." A photo followed. Then another. Then Vanessa's memo requesting removal of speculative brake language. Paul, the board member, leaned forward. "Is that from the official crash investigation?" "No," Elaine said. "That is from the preliminary mechanical report before it was revised." Vanessa stood. "This is privileged, incomplete, and misleading." The door opened. Marcus Bell walked in. His face was pale but determined. "No," he said. "It's the truth." Trevor looked like he had seen a dead man. Marcus placed a folder on the conference table. "I inspected Mr. Whitmore's SUV after the crash. The brake line had been loosened before impact. I wrote it. Ms. Cole pressured me to remove it. When I refused, I lost contracts, my shop got buried in legal threats, and a man came to my house to tell me my wife's medical bills could get a lot worse if I kept talking." Vanessa's face hardened. "You have no proof of that accusation." Marcus pulled out a small recorder. "Actually," he said, "have your voicemail." The room breathed in all at once. Trevor stepped back. Vanessa turned toward him, and for the first time her perfect mask cracked. "You said he deleted everything." Trevor whispered, "Shut up." The board heard it. So did the attorney sitting at the far end of the table. Alexander closed his eyes, not in weakness. In recognition. The lie was dying in front of him. Then came the first twist none of you expected. Grace stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "There's more." Trevor stared at his wife. "Grace." She ignored him. "For 2 years, I believed my call distracted my brother and caused the crash. Trevor encouraged that. He told me not to upset Alexander. He told me the company needed stability. He told me guilt was the price of family." Her eyes filled with tears. "But 3 weeks ago, I found an old phone in our safe. Trevor's old phone. I was looking for insurance papers." She lifted a small envelope. "I found messages between Trevor and Vanessa from the night before the accident." Trevor lunged toward her. Security moved faster. One guard caught his arm before he reached the table. Grace placed printed messages in front of the board attorney. Her voice broke, but she kept reading. "He won't approve the North Corridor deal. Then he needs tow out before Friday. No permanent solution unless it looks like weather." Nobody moved. My stomach turned. Alexander stared at Trevor. "You tried to kill me because I wouldn't approve a deal?" Trevor's face twisted. "You were going to ruin everything. I was going to reject a corrupt contract. You were going to destroy a billion-dollar opportunity because you wanted to play moral hero." Alexander's voice went quiet. "So you loosened my brakes." Trevor looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked away. That was the second twist. Trevor had not just known. He had ordered it. But the third twist came from Vanessa. She laughed. It was a small, cold sound. "You really think Trevor had the spine for that?" Trevor's head snapped toward her. Vanessa looked around the table, seeing the collapse and choosing revenge over loyalty. He wanted Alexander out. He wanted the transfer. He wanted the deal. But he didn't touch the car. Alexander's face went white. "Who did?" Vanessa's red mouth curved. "Your driver." The words hit the room like glass breaking. Alexander frowned. "I didn't have a driver that night." "No," she said. "Because I paid him to call in sick." Elaine whispered, "My God." Vanessa continued, voice calm now because she had nothing left to preserve. "The man who loosened the brake line was a contractor Tieto, the North Corridor Group. Trevor approved the payment. I handled the report. Your driver was paid to disappear from the schedule so you would take the SUV yourself. Grace's call was just convenient. We didn't plan that part. We used it." Grace covered her mouth. Alexander looked physically struck. Every cruelty of the past 2 years flashed across his face. Every time he had blamed Grace. Every time she had accepted it. Every family dinner ruined. Every apology withheld. All because criminals found grief useful. The board attorney stood. "This meeting is suspended. Security, no one leaves. I'm contacting federal authorities and Dallas police." Trevor started shouting then. He accused Vanessa. Vanessa accused Trevor. They tore each other apart with the desperation of people who had only ever been loyal to money. And in the middle of it, Alexander sat still. Not small. Not weak. Still. When officers arrived, Trevor tried one final performance. He looked at Grace. "Tell them I would never hurt your brother." Grace stared at the man she had married. Then she stepped back. "You hurtle off us." Trevor was escorted out first. Vanessa followed without looking at anyone. As she passed me, she paused. "You think this makes you family?" she whispered. I looked at her. "No," I said. "I think family is what's left when people like you are gone." Her eyes flashed. Then she was taken away. The boardroom emptied slowly, like people leaving a church after a funeral. Only Alexander, Grace, Elaine, Marcus, and I remained. For a while, nobody spoke. Then Alexander turned his chair toward Grace. His face crumpled. "I'm sorry." Grace's tears spilled over. He reached for her hand. "I am so sorry." She dropped to her knees in front of him and held onto him like she had been waiting 2 years to stop being punished. "I should have fought harder," she sobbed. "No," he said. "I should have loved you better." I looked away because some moments are too intimate to witness, even when you helped make them possible. Down the hall, Lily escaped the private office and ran straight into the boardroom before the security guards could stop her. "Did we win?" she asked. Alexander wiped his face. Noah appeared behind her, trying to look older than 9. Alexander looked at both of them. Then at me. "We survived," he said. "Winning may take longer." Lily considered that. "Can we still get pancakes?" For the first time that day, everyone laughed. The public scandal broke within 48 hours. Whitmore Development's board removed Trevor and Vanessa from all authority. Federal investigators opened a fraud case. Dallas police reopened questions around the crash. The North Corridor contract collapsed. Reporters camped outside Whitmore Tower and the mansion gates. Online, strangers argued about Alexander like he was a character in a show instead of a man who woke up every morning with pain in his spine. Some called him brave. Some called him foolish. Some called me a gold digger within 6 hours of my name leaking. That part hurt more than I wanted to admit. There were photos of me online carrying groceries and leggings. Comments about my children. Speculation about whether I had seduced a lonely disabled billionaire. I had survived poverty, grief, and humiliation, but strangers on the internet have a special way of making you feel naked in your own kitchen. One evening, I found Noah reading comments on a tablet. His face was stone. I took it from him gently. "Don't read that. They said you trapped him." "I didn't." "I know." His voice cracked. "They don't." Alexander heard from the doorway. He rolled in slowly. "Noah," he said, "people who can't imagine loyalty always call it a scheme." Noah looked at him. "Does it bother you?" "Yes," Alexander said. "But less than it used to." "Why?" Alexander glanced at me. "Because now I know the truth before the crowd votes on it." The next week, Alexander held a press conference. His PR team advised against mentioning me. He ignored them. He rolled up to the microphones in a dark suit, Grace beside him, Elaine behind him, and spoke for 9 minutes without notes. He did not perform inspiration. He did not pretend forgiveness was easy. He said his company had been violated by people he trusted. He said his sister had been manipulated through guilt. He said disability did not make a person incompetent, and caregiving did not make a person invisible. Then he said my name. Maya Rivera noticed what executives were paid not to see, he told the cameras. She protected my household when she had every reason to protect only herself. Anyone who reduces her to her income, her job title, or her relationship to me is repeating the same arrogance that allowed this crime to happen. I watched from the kitchen at home, one hand over my mouth. Lily pointed at the screen. "Mr. Grumpy is using his serious eyebrows." Noah whispered. "He said your name." Yes. He had. Not like a secret, like a truth. Life did not turn into a fairy tale after that. Trevor and Vanessa did not vanish into prison overnight. Lawyers fought, investigations dragged. The driver was eventually found in Arizona under a different name. The contractor tied to the brake line took a plea deal months later. Trevor claimed he never intended Alexander to die, only Tobe delayed. And removed from active control. Vanessa testified that everyone understood the risk. There is a special kind of evil in people who use corporate language to describe attempted murder. Alexander had nightmares. Grace filed for divorce and moved into the East Wing for a while because being alone in her own house frightened her. Noah got into 2 fights at school defending me. Lily drew Vanessa as a dragon with lipstick. And me? I kept working. I told myself nothing had changed. I was still the caregiver. Still the widow. Still the mother who checked grocery prices and saved sauce packets from takeout bags. But the mansion changed around us. The breakfast room filled with homework, crayons, pill organizers, therapy bands, legal files, coffee cups, and Lily's endless drawings. Alexander started joining dinner. At first, he came because Lily demanded it. Then because Noah wanted help with a science project. Then because Grace said she hated eating alone. Then because I set a place for him without asking. He still had bad days. Days when pain sharpened his tongue. Days when he refused therapy. Days when he sat in the dark study and stared at architectural models like they were pieces of a country he had been exiled from. But now, when he snapped, he came back. "I'm sorry," he would say, awkward and stiff. The first time he apologized to Lily for raising his voice, she patted his hand. It's okay. Mommy says feelings are not crimes, but being mean with them is. Alexander looked at me. I'm being raised by a 6-year-old. She's strict, I said. Noah's bond with him grew in quieter ways. They built models together. Not fancy ones. Cardboard, glue, rulers, pencils. Alexander taught him about load-bearing walls and sight lines. Noah taught Alexander how to play a racing game on the tablet, then pretended not to notice when Alexander practiced alone at night to beat him. One Saturday, I found them in the study arguing over a bridge design. That support won't hold, Alexander said. It will if the weight spreads here, Noah argued. Alexander studied it. Then he nodded. You're right. Noah froze. Adults did not often admit that to him. Alexander handed him the pencil. Fix mine. That night, Noah asked if Daniel would be mad that he liked Alexander. The question hit me in the ribs. I sat on the edge of his bed. Your dad loved you more than anything, I said. Love doesn't get replaced. It gets added to. Like rooms in a house? I smiled through tears. Exactly. He thought about that. Then Mr. Alexander is maybe a garage. I laughed so hard I cried harder. A few months later, Alexander took 3 steps between the parallel bars. Not graceful steps. Not movie steps, they were brutal. His arms shook. His face went gray. Sweat slid down his temple. The therapist hovered close. Grace cried openly. Noah shouted the seconds like a sportscaster. 1, 2, 3. On the 3rd step, Alexander nearly collapsed into the chair. Lily threw both arms up. Hewicks like a new building. Nobody understood what that meant, but she said it with such triumph Will cheered. Alexander covered his face with one hand. I thought he was in pain. Then I realized he was crying. Later, I found him alone in the therapy room, staring at the bars. I used to think if I couldn't walk like before, nothing counted, he said. I leaned against the doorframe and now I think 3 steps can be louder than a mile. I smiled. That sounds like something you should put on a motivational poster. Don't ruin it. We laughed. Then he looked at me with an expression that made my breath catch. Maya. I knew what was coming before he said it. And I was terrified. Not because I didn't feel it. Because I did. I can be your caregiver and something else, I said quickly. He nodded, I know. My children can't be pulled into something confusing. I know. And I won't be rescued. I won't be a headline about a poor widow saved by a billionaire. His face tightened with something like pain. I would never make you small like that. I looked away. I've been small in too many rooms. I know, he said again. You don't. He accepted that, then he said, then teach me. That was the thing about Alexander after the truth came out. He stopped pretending he already understood everything. The next day, he arranged for an outside care team to take over the formal parts of his medical routine. He did not fire me. He gave me a choice. A real one. He offered me a position coordinating household operations and accessibility projects through his charitable foundation, with a salary that made me sit down when I saw it. Not charity. Not vague. A job with a title, benefits, hours, boundaries, and respect. You're trying to make it clean, I said. I'm trying to make it right. NS? He looked nervous. A billionaire. Nervous. Us can wait until you decide there is an S. So we waited. Not dramatically. Not painfully. Carefully. I moved into the guest house only after my apartment lease ended and only because Grace insisted the kids needed stability during the media storm. I paid rent, even though Alexander argued. Elaine reviewed the agreement because I wanted everything clean and auto-survive gossip. Months passed. Trevor's trial date was set. Vanessa took a plea deal. Grace began sleeping through the night. Noah joined aerobotics club. Lily stopped keeping her inhaler under her pillow. Alexander returned to Whitmore Development as executive chair with Elaine as interim compliance director and 3 board members removed for negligence. He also shut down the corrupt North Corridor pursuit and launched a fund for adaptive housing renovations for families who could not afford them. The first home they modified belonged to Marcus Bell. His wife was in remission by then. When Alexander told him the foundation would cover ARMP, bathroom changes, and medical transport support, Marcus cried in the driveway and said, I don't deserve this. Alexander answered, neither did I deserve what happened. Deserving isn't the only reason to do things. I loved him in that moment. Not because he was generous. Because he was free. Not fully healed. Not magically transformed. Free enough to choose something other than bitterness. The night before Trevor's sentencing hearing, Alexander asked me to walk with him in the garden. He used his chair most of the way, then stood with his cane near the big oak tree Lily had drawn 100 times. The mansion glowed behind us. Noah and Lily were inside arguing about popcorn. Grace was on the phone with her attorney, laughing for once. The air smelled like cut grass and rain. Alexander leaned carefully on the cane. "I need to ask you something," he said. My stomach flipped. "If this is a proposal, I will push you into the pool." He laughed. "No, not tonight." "Good. I want to ask if I can love you without making your life harder." That question undid me more than a proposal would have. Because every man who had wanted something from me after Daniel died had asked for access, attention, comfort, forgiveness. No one had asked about the weight. I looked at him. "You already do," I said. He went very still. "You make it complicated," I added. His mouth twitched. "You make it annoying sometimes." "Fair. But not harder." His eyes shone. I stepped closer and took his hand. The first time he kissed me, it was under that oak tree, with his cane pressed into the grass and my wedding ring still hanging from my neck. I did not feel like I was betraying Daniel. I felt like grief had finally made room for tomorrow. Trevor was sentenced 7 months later after pleading guilty to fraud, conspiracy, and charges connected to the crash. Vanessa received a reduced sentence for cooperating. The man who tampered with the brakes went to prison too. None of it gave Alexander back the 2 years he lost. None of it erased Grace's guilt or me children's fear. Justice is not a time machine. But it is a door. And for us, it opened. A year after the boardroom meeting, Alexander proposed for real. Not at a gala. Not in front of cameras. Not with violins or candles or some ridiculous diamond hidden in dessert. He proposed in the kitchen at 7:12 on a Tuesday morning while Lily was wearing mismatched socks, Noah was late for school, Grace was burning toast, and I had coffee spilled down my sleeve. Alexander rolled into the chaos, cleared his throat, and said, "Maya, I had a speech." Noah looked up from his backpack. "Is this about the dishwasher again?" "No," Lily gasped. "Are we getting a dog?" "Also no." I stared at Alexander. He looked more terrified than he had in court. "I had a speech," he repeated. "But this is the life I want. Loud, late, messy, impossible, full of people I love. So I'm asking inside it, not outside it." He held out a ring. Not huge. Beautiful. Warm gold, with a small diamond and 2 tiny stones on either side. "For Noah and Lily," he said softly, "because loving you means loving the rooms already built in your heart." I cried before I said yes. Lily screamed so loudly the smoke alarm went off from Grace's toast. Noah hugged Alexander first. That nearly broke all of us. We married under the oak tree in the backyard. There were 37 guests. Elaine wore silver. Marcus came with his wife. Grace walked me halfway down the aisle because she said family was not always about tradition. Noah carried the rings with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Lily scattered petals not only in front of me, but around Alexander's wheelchair and cane. "They helped too," she whispered. "The tabloids called it a fairy tale. They were wrong. Fairy tales skip the medical bills, panic attacks, therapy setbacks, court dates, online cruelty, child nightmares, and the awkward work of learning how to love someone without trying to repair them into a version that makes you more comfortable. Our story was not a fairy tale. It was a house rebuilt after sabotage beam by beam. Truth by truth. Apology by apology. Years later, our daughter Aurora was born on a rainy morning in April. Alexander held her first because I insisted. He wept so hard the nurse asked if he needed to sit down, then remembered he already was. Noah became the kind of big brother who pretended babies were annoying but checked on Aurora every 5 minutes. Lily declared herself assistant mother and tried to rename the baby Pancake. The house that once felt like a museum became impossible to keep clean. There were toys in the hallway, therapy bands on chairs, Grace's books in the sunroom, Noah's robotics parts on the dining table, Lily's art taped to nearly every wall, Aurora's bottles by the sink, and Alexander's architectural models sharing space with crayons. Sometimes Alexander walked with a cane. Sometimes he used the chair all day. Sometimes pain took him somewhere quiet, and he had to find his way back. But he no longer treated the chair like defeat. One evening, I found him in the garden holding Aurora while Noah and Lily chased fireflies across the lawn. He was in his wheelchair, the baby asleep against his chest, the mansion glowing behind him. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up at me. "I was thinking about the day you arrived." "Oh no. You stood in my foyer looking ready to murder me with a tote bag. You called my children baggage." His face softened with shame. "I know. I almost left." "I know that too." I sat beside him on the bench. He looked at Noah helping Lily untangle a jar lid. "I thought power meant nobody could touch you," he said. "Then I lost my legs, my company, my judgment, almost my sister, almost my life. And 2 children with worn backpacks walked into my house and started touching everything that mattered." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "Lily did warn you your heart didn't have to sleep. She was rude. She was 6. Still rude. I laughed. Aurora stirred, then settled again. Alexander kissed the top of her head. I lost the ability to walk before I understood I had already stopped living, he said. You brought Noise back. No, I said. We brought truth. Noise came free. He smiled. Inside, Grace called that dinner was ready. Noah yelled that Lily had glitter on the dog. We did eventually get a dog, because Alexander lost that argument before it began. Lily shouted that the glitter was emotionally necessary. Alexander groaned. I stood and reached for Aurora. He handed her to me, then pushed his chair toward the house. At the ramp, he paused. The same kind of ramp Lily had drawn before any of us knew we would need one for more than wheels. For welcome. For return. For choosing to enter again. He looked back at me. Coming? I looked at the man everyone thought was finished, the house everyone thought was cold, the children everyone once called baggage, and the life that had grown from the wreckage of somebody else's cruelty. I arrived at that door because he was desperate. He opened it because he had no choice. Neither of us knew that behind all that money was a poverty no bank could measure. No one knew that 2 children with scuffed shoes would expose a crime executives had buried under signatures and fear. No one knew that a man in a wheelchair, a widow with overdue rent, a guilty sister, a brave mechanic, and a little girl with crayons would bring down. People who thought power made them untouchable. But that is how families are sometimes made. Not from blood. Not from perfect beginnings. From the moment someone sees you at your lowest and decides you are still worth standing beside. Ours began the day a billionaire looked at my children and called them baggage. And I stayed long enough to prove they were the reason his whole life came back.